Alright, so now that we have the quadratic formula, what I want to do is I want to use the formula to be able to solve some quadratic equations. Now right here, I have the equation 2x squared plus 7x plus 6 equals 0. And what we're going to do is we're going to identify what A, B, and C are before we get started. So using my red pen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see what A, B, and C are. Now A is always going to be the leading coefficient. So this is going to be my A, and then B is always going to be the linear coefficient, which is always in front of the x. So my B is going to be 7 in this example. And then the last number off to the side is going to be C. This is also called my constant term. So we're going to use A, B, and C, and we're going to plug them into the formula to see if we can get an answer for this. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to keep x the same. We're going to keep x the same. But wherever I see a A or a B or a C, I can replace them with these three numbers. Okay? So we know for a fact that B is equal to 7. So this is going to end up being a -7. -7. And then I have a plus or minus in the middle, so I'm going to bring that down. And then I'm going to have a square root right here. Okay? Inside the square root, I have B squared. I know for a fact that B is 7, so I'm going to put a 7 here, and I'm going to square it. And then I'm going to bring down the minus 4. 4 always stays the way it is. It doesn't change. And we're going to replace A with 2, and we're going to replace C with 6. So I'm going to have 4 times 2 times 6. And I'm going to extend the radical symbol. Okay? Now, everything is going to be divided by 2a. So I'm going to draw my fraction bar, and on the bottom, I'm going to put a 2, and beside that 2, I'm going to put whatever a is. And I know for a fact that a is 2, so I'm going to put a 2 inside here. Okay? So now we just have to simplify a little bit. Now, the first thing I always do is I always simplify the radical first. That's going to be the first thing I'm going to do. And then, after that, once I get everything simplified inside the radical and I square root of whatever's on the inside, I start to move over here. And I'm going to simplify this second. And I'm going to be using the plus or minus to help me out with that. Then the last thing I do, I'm going to be simplifying what's at the bottom of the fraction. So, what's going to be inside the square root? Well, I have 7 squared. I know that that's going to be 49. So when I write this out, I keep the -7 the same, I keep the plus or minus the same, and inside the square root, I'm going to have 49 minus, and here, I know that 4 times 2 is going to give me 8. 4 times 2 is 8. And then 8 times 6 is going to give me 48. So I multiplied these three numbers together, and I got 48. And then at the bottom, I still have 2 times 2. But we know that that's actually equal to 4. So I can put a 4 at the bottom. Alright, so this is beginning to take shape. We need to finish simplifying the radical, and then we can move on to this, and then finally move on to the denominator. Alright, so x equals -7 plus or minus the square root of what? 49 minus 48. I know that 49 minus 48 is going to give me 1, so I actually have just a 1 under the square root. And then in the denominator, I'll have that 4. Okay, so if I take the square root of 1, I should just get a 1, right? So I can replace the square root of 1 with a 1. So I have -7 to my 1, and everything is still divided by 4. Okay, so now the radical is finished with, so I'm done with my first step. Now I can move on to my second step, which is adding and subtracting in the middle. So here I have negative and plus or minus 1. And what I'm going to do with that is I can take it as a plus or I could take it as a minus. And we're going to end up doing both, because a quadratic equation is always going to have two solutions. So if I let that be a plus, I'm going to get negative 7 plus 1, and that's going to give me negative 6. And everything is still divided by 4. Okay? Now, since I've used the plus up, I'm going to do the minus next. So what's negative 7 minus 1? That's going to give me negative 8. And everything is still divided by 4. So the last thing we have to do is divide by what's ever at the bottom. So if I divide by 4, the first fraction, I'm going to have negative 6 divided by 4. That's not going to give me a whole number. It's going to give me a fraction, negative 3 over 2. So all I did was I simplified this fraction by dividing both sides by 2. And then over here, I know that negative 8 divided by 4 is going to give me negative 2. So these are going to be my two answers. So inside my solution set, I'm going to have negative 3 halves and negative 2. Those are my two solutions. And that's how you use the quadratic formula. I hope that helps.